Kady Braine here with you on BBC Three Counties Radio, keeping you company for the next hour. And I have got another Sunday stroll for you this week. And if you've missed this and don't know what I'm talking about already, I have been meeting members of the community and going on walks and just talking about the role faith has played in their lives. And this week, well, there was a little bit of a problem. Have a listen to this. Yeah, rain. I knew it was going to happen at some point, but I got caught out by the weather. But don't worry, it didn't stop me because I was still able to meet my guest. We just had to sit in a cozy office. So yes, my guest this week is Rabbi Adams Moffat from St. Albans Masorti Synagogue. Now, Adam, he was ordained from the Jewish Theological Seminary in New York, where he also received an MA in Jewish thought. But he actually grew up in Phoenix, Arizona, has lived in Minnesota, New York, and Israel before moving to the UK. So I really enjoyed my chat with Adam, and that is coming up very shortly. But first, we're going to have a bit more music. It's Rummer. I Am Blessed.
And I need to break all these chains for all time. I wanna sit out in the rain, and I wanna feel my heart again. I am blessed, I am blessed, I am blessed. You don't need to tell me I am blessed. Tell me I know that hope and love can be found in this world. And I need to find the roads and the rivers that will lead me home. I'm gonna sit out in the rain, and I'm gonna feel my heart again. I am blessed, I am blessed, I am blessed. You don't need to tell me I am blessed, I am blessed, I am blessed. You don't need to tell me I know that hope and love can be found in this world. A road I'll gladly follow. I'll gladly follow. And everyone knows all that is glittering is not gold. And I've gotta say, I really wasn't born that way. I'm going where the sky meets the dawn. I'm going where the stars meet the shore. Won't you come down?
From her 2014 album Into Colour, that's Rummer, I Am Blessed. Good morning, Kady Braine here with you on BBC Three Counties Radio. And like I said, it is time for my Sunday stroll. And this week, the guest is Adam Zagoria Moffat, the rabbi from St. Albans Masorti Synagogue. So join me from the dry comfort of his office this week. Obviously, we can't be outside because of the weather today, so we're sat in a very cosy office here. But what I want to know about you to begin with is, did faith play a part in your early childhood? So in Arizona, because that's where you grew up, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's right. It didn't really. I think for most people who become clergy, it probably did. It's probably something that's always been part of their lives. For me, I knew I was Jewish, but it didn't really mean anything in a deep way. We didn't do that much Jewish stuff. And Judaism is a bit different as a religion than most others because it's not really so much about what you believe, it's about what you do. So if you don't do very much, then you're very easily isolated from the Jewish community more broadly. I didn't really grow up with much contact with the Jewish community. Didn't have bar mitzvah, didn't go to Hebrew school. It wasn't until I was a teenager I started becoming interested in Jewish life and fell in with a rather eccentric group of ultra-Orthodox Jews for a time because I was working at a very kosher restaurant. And it was a weird sort of series of circumstances that led me there, but it allowed me to start to explore Jewish life for the first time, really.
What was it that sparked your interest?
I think like a lot of people, I was always interested as a kid in the big questions. When you're little, right, you have a real sense of awe about the world. You look around and you go, that's amazing. And you ask questions that adults usually find very uncomfortable, like, where do these things come from? Or what is God? Or, what do you mean when you say that? And for me as a kid, I think I had a lot of those. I was probably really annoying to be around. And I don't really remember. And I found the answers that I was given very unsatisfactory, whether at school or from religious leaders I met. I'd met rabbis even, and I was really excited to ask them, tell me the answers to the big questions. And usually they were very dismissive, actually, that, it doesn't matter so much. What matters is what you do and how you treat people, which is true, right? I don't want to discount that. But being around a different kind of religious community, one that was more open to mysticism, more interested in a kind of more spiritual practice of Judaism, perhaps, I found people for the first time when I was a teenager who were interested in answering those questions and excited to talk about them, talk about what the soul is and where it comes from and why things are the way they are. And so that, for me, was a real spark.
So when was the jump, though? Because we all have faith, and obviously you decided to follow that path, but what made you want to take it a step further?
Well, it was a few steps back first, really. I had gotten very enthusiastic about a very serious practice of Judaism as a teen, but ultimately also saw a lot of stuff that I didn't like about that and kind of got a bit confused by it and didn't really know what to do. So for quite a few years in my young adult life, I stepped back from religion altogether, or at least from Judaism, and spent a long time kind of looking for those big question answers elsewhere, hanging out with all sorts of different kind of religious communities, Sufis and Druids and Buddhists and Freemasons and whomever seemed to have answers. And for me, that was a real process of realizing. It was kind of ultimately when you go out somewhere and you think you're walking one direction, but you find you've walked in a circle. I ended up coming back to a place where all the things that were attractive to me were borrowed from or derived from or themselves actually Jewish. And it was probably 5 years after my initial kind of experience of, Judaism is pretty cool, that I actually realized that I could find my own place in it. And that was a much more adult and much more moderated and reasonable version of faith, because the initial burst of it actually isn't that productive. You kind of have to go away for a little bit and come back sometimes.
So the next step, I guess, is when you moved to New York. What happened there? Why the jump to New York?
I decided when I was about, I guess in the middle of university, that I was interested in maybe being a rabbi, but I was pretty unsure about it. The real reason I originally decided to become a rabbi is because I couldn't decide what to do. I was either going to be a social worker or a counselor or something in that regard. And I couldn't quite make up my mind. And my wife, who's much more sensible than I am, said, well, you should just be a rabbi. Because then you can do all those things. You can be a teacher and a social worker and a counselor and, a million other things. And it hadn't really occurred to me that was a possibility because I didn't have the background. I hadn't spent that long learning Hebrew. I'd only started learning in university. Hadn't really done any serious learning. Didn't really know that much about what goes on in a synagogue. So it seemed a bit crazy for me to go and become a rabbi. But I thought I'd give it a try. And so I applied to the rabbinical seminary that suited me, which is JTS, Jewish Theological Seminary in New York. And basically made a pitch that was, I'm not qualified. I don't know what I'm doing, but I'll work really hard and I'll catch up. And thankfully they bought it and they decided to let me in. And I did an extra year than most of my classmates. And I probably worked harder at some stages than most people who had more background. And I started out way behind, but because I was really hungry for it, I think it actually helped me to have a really productive time there.
Did you face any challenges at all going through that process and not having the background?
Yeah, I wanted to quit pretty much every day for the first few years. And the only reason I didn't is probably being talked out of it by my wife and by friends and having friends who were in a similar position. There were a few of us there who had come from unusual backgrounds. And now that's very common. But at the time it wasn't. I was one of kind of the first students that I knew of who didn't have the typical background, who were coming in from less knowledge. So it was a bit intimidating and definitely found the first few years really hard. It's grueling. You got there before the sun comes up in the morning and you're studying all day and you go home when the sun goes, after the sun goes down. There were weeks I barely even went outside during the daytime. And I think that has a big impact, and it's also quite transformative. It should be, right? Because you're learning a lot and you're changing a lot. It's all happening very quickly. So it's a very chaotic and stressful time. But once you get to a certain point, you get past that.
And everyone there that you're studying with at that time, are they all going for the same goal? Do they want to be rabbis, or are they trying to go into another line?
No, there's lots of ways to be a rabbi. Everyone who's there is studying and learning because they want to share that learning with the Jewish people, right? Because what it means to be a rabbi is a teacher. Don't get any special powers or anything, unfortunately. It's just the ability to go out and to be able to help Jewish people understand what it means to be Jewish. But there's lots of ways to do that. Most, not all, but most probably want to work in a synagogue, work in a community. But some end up working in academic settings or through charities or in schools or in hospitals, prisons, police forces, etc.
Rabbi Adam Zagoria Moffat there from St Albans Masorti Synagogue, sharing his unconventional journey into faith. More of that coming up very shortly, but first, it's Fleetwood Mac. Fleetwood Mac, you make loving fun.
Every Saturday morning from 6 on BBC Three Counties Radio.
It's just a bit of Saturday morning silliness.
Babs Michelle.
What are you doing? Why are you up so early?
I'm going on a med cruise.
Oh, is it all inclusive?
It is, yeah.
Oh, man. You're going to need some elastication on your trousers, let me tell you.
Babs Michelle.
What will you be knitting at the pub? It's the Red Lion in Dagnall.
The Red Lion in Dagnall, yes. Lovely.
Got a little G&T on the go, a little click and clack of your needles. And then 5 G&Ts in, you've dropped all your stitches, there's a big hole in it, who cares?
Babs Michelle. Every Saturday morning from 6. BBC Three Counties Radio.
Kady Braine.
BBC
Three Counties Radio.
Good morning if you're just joining us. Kady Braine here with my Sunday strolls again this week. Although this week I did get caught out by the wet weather. So the walk had to be a non-walk and I sat in the comfort of Adam Zagorian Moffat's office at the St Albans Masorti Synagogue. But it was a fantastic chat despite all that. And I've got more of that coming up. But I just wanted to say, whenever I say hello on Sunday mornings, I always say the date. And I don't think I did this week. And I've just looked up because it's on a big screen in front of me. I can't believe that it's July, Sunday the 3rd of July. Oh my goodness, where is the time going? But yes, I've been back on my Sunday strolls and this week I've got a fantastic guest. Really enjoyed my chat with Adam, and you heard just before, if you missed it, you can catch up on BBC Sounds, but he was talking about he wanted to be a teacher, a social worker or a counsellor. And a rabbi means he can do all of those things. His journey into becoming a rabbi was a little bit different from what you would expect to be the norm. But, you know, he had willpower. There was times when he wanted to quit, but just a fascinating journey. So I want to share more of that with you. Here's the next part of my chat with Adam Zagorian Moffat from St Albans Masorti Synagogue, talking more about his life and journey to St Albans.
We're a pretty traditional community here in St Albans, so we do, as a Masorti community, which means traditional, all of our services are in Hebrew. Obviously we read the Torah every week from Hebrew. Everything's in Hebrew. Hebrew literacy is the single most important thing to a Jewish life. Like, Judaism has no authority, has no hierarchy. You don't need a rabbi at all. I know it's something rabbis don't like saying, but rabbis are unnecessary.
Don't put yourself out of a job right now.
No, I know. I would be elated if I made myself redundant, because what that would mean is if I give everyone here the skills to be able to read all of these books for themselves and engage with it themselves and have the Hebrew literacy to just open up and find out what's in the tradition for themselves, then they don't need me. And I would be very pleased. It's unlikely, but I would be very pleased.
We've mentioned Arizona, where you grew up, then moving to New York, but you also lived in Israel for a bit as well.
Part of rabbinical school usually involves spending some time at a kind of sister program in Israel. So yeah, we lived for almost a year in Jerusalem, which was really nice. And it was nice to have the opportunity to travel, because I come from a very poor background in the States and hadn't traveled at all overseas prior to that. So moving to a foreign country, at that point with a 3-month-old baby, having never set foot in that country, but also having never left the country you were born in ever, is kind of a bit mad. And the weird part of the story is that actually the remarkable thing about Israel for Jewish people is you get there and it doesn't feel strange at all. It feels quite at home, even though you've never been there before and you don't know anyone. So that was a really powerful experience, I think, just actually having the opportunity to live abroad.
How's your travelling been since?
Well, moving to St Albans has helped a lot, because obviously the nature of living in the UK makes it much more accessible to travel, and I've gotten to visit a lot of places I never thought I would.
What's been your favourite place?
I have a real soft spot for Prague. We spent some time in Prague. There's a community in Prague, and it has a really rich and interesting Jewish history, and I just really love the city. I'd want to spend more time there if I could.
So you've been here since 2017, is that
That's right? Yeah.
So what brought you to the UK? And why
The
St
rain.
Albans?
I mean, I had never heard of St Albans before, but the reality is when you're graduating from rabbinical school, they basically publish a list of all the kind of synagogues, all the Masorti synagogues in the world are looking for rabbi. And we weren't particularly close with either of our families, and we were up for the opportunity to live abroad. Having lived in Israel and having such good experience, we thought, we could probably do that again. So, we looked at communities in Canada, in Britain, in Australia, but this one was particularly special. We came to visit and just immediately fell in love with St. Albans as a city and also the community here at Sam's.
What was it about St. Albans that you particularly liked?
I think most people live here would say the same thing, which is it's kind of this sweet spot of traditional British culture while also being quite a modern cosmopolitan city in some way. It's also right the sweet spot between being close enough to London that you can go if you want to, but specifically not London. And you get on a train and go 20 minutes and you're in King's Cross. You walk 20 minutes in any direction and you're in Fields of Sheep. And I think that's an ideal kind of moderated position to be in. So it has a real balanced way of life, which we really liked.
And you've mentioned already Masorti and the tradition side of things, but where did Masorti originate from?
In the UK, it has a different history than elsewhere. Here in the UK, Masorti Judaism is entirely, originally the product of what's called the Jacobs Affair, which was an incident in the 1960s in which Rabbi Louis Jacobs was meant to be chief rabbi in the United Synagogue, which is the mainstream Orthodox denomination, which is who appoints the chief rabbi. It's only for them, really. And he was basically blackballed because he was having a more open-minded and more modern view of the world. And he himself didn't intend to start any kind of movement. He just was upset, understandably, and took his synagogue and went his own way with it, and his synagogue became independent. But enough people at the same time had similar objections to the United Synagogue, the Orthodox establishment in Britain, and it started to kind of snowball, actually, that other people felt similarly and kind of followed him. And over the decades since, it's grown into a movement now, which is, it's really not a protest movement against orthodoxy anymore. It's its own thing. But it started with that sense of the fact that you can be traditional. You should be able to be traditional and observant and religious, and also be a citizen of the world and be open and modern. And the two aren't contradictory. They're not exclusive.
What about here in St. Albans? Was there a need for the Masorti here? When did it all start?
So, similarly, a bit later, I think, filtering up to St. Albans, but we started our community in 1990. And it started for similar reasons as a kind of protest. The St. Albans United Synagogue, which is the Orthodox synagogue here, has a really long history, and some families that were involved in it felt that it had gone in an increasingly right-wing and more restrictive and somewhat regressive direction. And taking a cue from Rabbi Jacobs and the other communities that were doing similar, they felt like actually they wanted to do something their own way. They never intended to start a community either. It was just 3 families that started meeting in their living room instead, because Judaism has that kind of chaotic energy. There's no authority, so you can make a synagogue anywhere you are. A synagogue is not a building. And that group of people, which is the synagogue, gradually met other people, and demographics have been in our favor as Jews have moved out of London and into Hertfordshire. And gradually it's grown into the community it is today.
People get ready. There's a train a-coming. You don't need no baggage. You just get on board. All you need is faith to hear the diesels humming. You don't need no ticket. You just thank the Lord. So people get ready. There's a train to Jordan, picking up passengers from coast to coast. Faith is the key. Open up the doors and board 'em. There's hope for all hear the diesels humming, and you don't need a ticket. You just thank the Lord one more time. People get ready. There's a train coming. You don't need no baggage. You just get on board. All you need is faith. Don't need no ticket. You just thank the Come on, people get ready. All you need is faith. All you need is faith. You don't need a ticket. You just thank the Lord.
Sil, People Get Ready. Love that song so much. To be fair, I love everything by Sil. If you're just tuning in, I'm Kady Braine here with you on BBC Three Counties Radio this morning until 7 o'clock. And I've been doing my Sunday strolls again. So what this is where I go out, meet people in the community and talk to them about their journey of faith. And this week, my guest is Rabbi Adams Moffat from St. Albans Masorti Synagogue. And I had a wonderful chat with Adam. He's such an interesting guy because his journey was a bit unconventional in a way. He didn't know he was going to be a rabbi. Faith didn't come into his life until a bit later on. So yeah, a bit of a different journey, but that's why it's so interesting. And what I loved from that last piece was him explaining, a synagogue is not a building, it's a group of people. And I just love that. But he also was saying how he has a sweet spot for St. Albans, but his favourite place to travel is Prague. And it made me think, where's my favourite place to travel? I don't know. I can't think. I will keep thinking though, whilst we play some more music. And if I make a decision, I'll let you know.
People crying, can't find something to believe. They put so much faith in people who are lying. They're so easy to deceive. Ain't no mystery, you know the words set you free. They're for all the world to see. When you got it on your side, there's no reason left to hide. You gotta give it to receive. Hey, the message is love. The message is love.
message is love. It's Arthur Baker, Al Green, and the Black Disciples. Good morning, Kady Braine here with you on BBC Three Counties Radio, and I am doing my Sunday strolls once again, or I should call it my Sunday sit down this week because the rain caught us out. So I had to sit in the office, and my guest, Adam Zagorya-Moffat, a rabbi from St Albans Masorti Synagogue. So join me on my Sunday sit down.
Obviously, before coming here today, I've tried to do a bit of research, find out a bit about you and ask you the right kind of questions. And I think from what I've kind of gathered so far and things that I've seen, I would say you're quite passionate about making faith accessible. Would you say that's right?
Yeah, I think my mission statement in some way is to make Judaism accessible for people. I want there to be very low thresholds to Jewish people learning about Judaism and getting involved, but high quality when you get through that threshold. Because for me, growing up, I had the opposite experience. The thresholds felt high. It felt like there were barriers to being in the Jewish community that I couldn't surmount because of my social economic position. And when I did try and crack through it, I found it quite disappointing because they weren't answering my questions. So trying to reverse that a bit, actually, and make a community which is non-judgmental, pretty relaxed. You know, my job isn't to shame people for not observing Jewish law. My job is to teach them about it and to meet people where they are. And I think actually my background helps me to do that because I remember what it's like to not know where we are in the service, what page we're on. I remember what bacon tastes like. It's fantastic, right? I have the ability, hopefully, to understand many of my congregants in that I'm actually not so different, and I shouldn't be, right? The rabbi shouldn't be high and lofty and distant. Rabbi should be someone who is like a tour guide, you know, who's walked the path before, maybe gone a little bit ahead, and so can say, oh, up ahead on the right, there's going to be this thing. I just need to be able to guide people through the paths that lead into Judaism, and there's a lot of them.
What work do you do here at the moment with the community or with families to kind of make it all very inclusive?
I mean, it's a bit of whack-a-mole, you know, the game, because actually we have a really multi-generational community. We have, you know, everyone from 0 to 100, and we're doing different things for different groups, really. But a lot of it has to do with education, where we provide kind of supplementary school education called Cheder on Sunday mornings for families whose children don't go to Jewish schools. It's actually for any children, but a lot of families who send their children to Jewish schools feel like, you know, that's their Jewish education. We try and enhance it, actually, to suggest that there's something gained in just being involved in the community, even if you get Jewish education elsewhere, because you can't have too much. We also do a lot of adult education. I teach Hebrew to adults, try and, you know, increase that threshold and get people over the door, get them connected to literacy. I teach a lot of stuff that might be surprising because it's nothing to do with faith per se, but cultural stuff, you know, classes about Jews and comic books and about, you know, the history of different aspects of Jewish practice and community. And for me, you know, Judaism it's a whole civilization. There's music and food and culture and history and land, and religion is one piece of that. And it's an important piece of that. But the way of thinking about religion as you have to believe X, Y, and Z is actually a really Christian one. And for me, I'm mostly trying to get people to see that they can be Jewish and embrace that without apologizing for it. The amount of people who walk in my door and start out by apologizing. Sorry, I don't come to synagogue more. Sorry, I'm not a very good Jew. Sorry, I don't keep kosher. I want to create a community where no one feels they need to apologize for who they are, but instead can just grow and develop into who they want to be.
We're sat here in the office, and around us, I mean, there are so many books. I don't even want to guess how many there are, but there are a lot. Yeah. So you strike me as someone who always wants to read, always wants to learn. Is there something in particular that you're looking into at the minute or studying?
Oh, well, anyone in my community will tell you that I'm a bit all over the place, an eccentric reader. And I think that, again, kind of I bring that into different things that I'm looking at. But many of these books and my kind of persistent passion is for mysticism, Jewish mysticism, which is called Kabbalah. And, I have the privilege to have the time and space to be able to spend some time studying and learning and teaching sometimes. Actually, some of the classes I teach here are not the kind of classes you'd find at other synagogues because my interests are a bit different, I suppose, as a rabbi, and everyone's best poised to teach the things they care about. So I teach a lot of the Zohar, which is a medieval work of Jewish mysticism, and teach meditation classes and things like that.
And you've got a master's in Jewish thought. Is that?
Yeah,
I
that's
got that right?
That's right, yeah.
What does that involve?
It's basically a philosophy degree, right, put in different terms, and in particular it involved doing a thesis project on a contemporary Jewish mystic who is very politically active. So I looked at his political writings, actually. He was a very strident communist, which is unusual in very religious people. It's interesting to see how he brought those two things together and how, for him, mysticism and politics went hand in hand.
Adam Zagoria Moffat, the rabbi at St Albans Masorti Synagogue there, describing himself as an eccentric reader. That's not a bad thing to be. I've got so many books on my shelf that I just haven't had the time to read. And they're good books as well. Still got to read Elton John's book. So gutted I'm not going to the concert. But here's Brian Houston. It's I'll Fly Away.
I know you weep, I don't despair or resist what life's decree. May your faith, though young, be brave till you come to be with me. When I'll fly away, don't search for me, 'cause I'll be safe in the hiding place of grace, where my angel waits for me. Where there'll be no more anguish or sleepless nights, and no more nightmares dread, and no more suffering or pain, only peace and safety and rest. 'Cause I'll fly away, so don't search for me. I'll be safe in the hiding place of grace, where my angel waits for me. I'll fly away, don't search for me, 'cause I'll be safe in the hiding place of grace, where my angel waits for me. Oh, my sweet mother, I know you mourn, but don't taste bitterness in your grief, and think not of the loss we share, but of your baby's merciful release. When I'll fly away, don't search for me, 'cause I'll be safe in the hiding place of grace, where my angel waits for me. I'll fly away, so don't you search for me. I'll be safe in the hiding place of grace, where my angel waits for me. Where my angel waits for me.
Every Thursday evening from 6 on BBC Three Counties Radio, Danny Fulbrook.
Have you ever wanted to be a Jedi? Well, now you can. Sort of.
Danny Fulbrook.
Do you hold the lightsabers, and when you swing them, are you tempted to sort of do those zoom, zoom?
You can buy ones that do that for you.
Wow.
We don't use them because they're quite distracting for your opponent. I was born in 1977. It's the year the first film came out. The first 12 years of my life was just all Star Wars, and every stick I picked up made that noise.
Danny Fulbrook.
I ended up becoming a competitive fencer because I wanted a sword in my hand, and I guarantee you that comes from Star Wars. It has to.
So you went from fencing to this?
Yeah.
Danny Fulbrook.
You're doing lessons in Biggleswade. Where is the Jedi Temple there then, if people want to get involved?
That's the Weatherly Centre.
Thursday evenings from 6. BBC Three Counties Radio.
Kady Braine.
BBC Three Counties Radio.
We are coming to the end of this week's Sunday Stroll. And when I started this morning, I was saying I got caught out by the weather. I pulled up and it was pouring down with rain. Not even a drizzle. It was pouring down with rain. I knew it was going to happen at some point. So yes, this week's Sunday Stroll is from the comfort of a dry office. My voice is going. I do apologise. And my guest this week is Rabbi Adams Zagoria Moffat from St Albans Masorti Synagogue. And what a fascinating story he has. And I'm grateful that he's shared it with us. And do remember, if you've missed out or any of my other Sunday strolls, you can catch up on BBC Sounds, as that's the same with any of our programmes here. But when I was doing my research about Adam, I read that he co-edited the first Hebrew-English Egalitarian Sephardi Siddur. And this is just absolutely fascinating. So, Adam will explain more in the final part of this week's Sunday Stroll.
A Siddur is a Jewish prayer book, and there are multiple subgroups of Jews based on not just ethnicity, but also kind of outlook and approach, kind of like schools of thought. And most Jews in Britain are Ashkenazi, which means they kind of trace their background to Central Europe. And a smaller minority of Jews are Sephardi, which means they trace their background usually to Spain, but generally the broader historical Muslim part of the world. And I come from a Sephardi family, although I didn't grow up with it, so I don't have much kind of inherent connection. And there isn't often many opportunities for people in more liberally minded, Masorti, Reform, liberal spaces to be able to access the fact there's other schools of thought in Judaism, other cultures, other ethnic approaches to Judaism, because it tends to be very dominated by the Ashkenazi approach. So all the way back in rabbinical school, I started the project of making a accessible Siddur, which was a Sephardi text and which had full translation into English and full transliteration, which makes it accessible for people to read who don't know Hebrew, and has a commentary, and is colorful and beautiful, and it's printed in full color because that's how it should be in some way. It's an aesthetic experience. And for me, it started as kind of a pet project because I could never find a Siddur for my own use, which was Sephardi, which I preferred, but was also modern and inclusive of people of all genders in particular, because that was just missing. So I made it instead, and thankfully a few other people find it interesting thing to join me in using and sharing.
One of the main things for me growing up was I had this Bible, and I described it to everyone because I don't know what's happened to it, but it had the most beautiful illustrations, and I could tell you the stories based on the images. It just kind of stuck in my mind. Just having a book in your life at any age, it can really kind of change studying for you, can't it?
Yeah, books are more than the words that are in them, including the Bible, including a prayer book, right? Like, it's an experience, and especially something like prayer, right? It's a multi-sensory experience. For Jewish people, it involves standing, bowing, bending. It involves often putting on things, tefillin, the leather straps we wear, or a talit, a prayer shawl. So a real kind of multi-sensory way in which prayer should be experienced. Singing, speaking, listening, sometimes dance and movement. And, it's a shame sometimes that a lot of religious publications tend to be very boring, uncreative, right? There tends to be a kind of a lack of interest in innovating because of a general conservative tendency. You don't see too many really innovative Bible translations, but why not? Why not play with it? Why not tinker with it. It's not going to demean all of the others, but it creates more room for people for whom they think, oh, I can't read the Bible, I don't know any of that stuff. But if they find something that suits them, whether aesthetically or linguistically or anything else, they might actually realize that there's something there for them.
We've spoken about how busy you are and the things that you do with your spare time. Obviously, that's something that you enjoy. But aside from here, you obviously have a family as well. So what's family life like?
I've got one son who's 9, Azriel. And he's really enjoying living in England. I think it suits him really well. And I think for my wife and I, we both grew up in the desert. We grew up together. And I think somewhat fantasizing about living somewhere where there's seasons and rain and the drama of, kind of mild English climate. And we really feel much more at home here in some way than we did in America.
Like today, where it was just pouring down and now the sun's coming out.
Shining. Yeah, exactly as it should be. So it's a much better way. I think there's a much better balance to life here generally. St. Albans is a very balanced place to be, and Jewish life in the UK is very well balanced, I think. And for me, that's always what I'm seeking after, is that place of kind of equilibrium and balance. And you should be able to be however many things you want to be without having to sacrifice any. And I think that's something that we found as a family. It's very much the case here.
And the final thing that I want to just touch upon is when I arrived today, you obviously gave me a tour of the building, and you briefly mentioned the work that you're doing for Ukraine. Can you tell me a bit about kind of the efforts that you've been doing behind the scenes to help?
Well, obviously a lot of people in our community have been, like many people in England and Britain, very motivated to try and do something. We've got, I'm very pleased we've got a few families that have been able to provide homes in the Homes for Ukraine scheme. And I think that's been it's always a very potent issue when it comes to refugee matters for Jewish communities, because most people, if you talk to them, will tell you a story about their own ancestors who were refugees, right? We have many people in the community who came over on kinder transport, many people who came over through different refugee programs before the war, after the war as displaced persons. And even if you go further back, Jewish people have always, unfortunately, in Europe, had a history of being kicked out, having to move because of war, persecution, exile, whatever it might be. So I think there's a very natural sense in Jewish community that we need to be able to provide and help if we can for other people in a similar position. And it's hard to know what we can do materially. We raised quite a bit of money in the beginning, which I was pleased with. And like I said, we've got lots of private members of the community who are helping out in different ways. And now we've kind of moved on to doing less crisis-related stuff and more longer-term helping people to feel comfortable. And thankfully, we've been able to work with the council to provide space for them to hold English as a second language classes for refugees here. And volunteers from the community are helping to kind of greet people, open the door, serve food, and just make sure that there's an opportunity for something as important as learning English when you find yourself in a new country to take place here at a synagogue. Because synagogue should be able to be a lot more than just a place of prayer.
What's next for you?
Oh, well, it's the quiet time in the Jewish year in some way, if there is one. So we're looking ahead a bit to the high holidays, which will happen in the autumn. I think that building up again as the pandemic starts to wane, if it is a challenge. And I think as a community, we have all the right kind of challenges here. We're growing, and we have the challenges of a growing community, growing pains sometimes, but also all the good challenges. Sometimes we don't have enough chairs and we don't have enough books, but hopefully we always have enough people. So I came here to be a rabbi here because I want those challenges, right? I want the ones that come with growth and success and development. And I think there's a lot of exciting things coming down the line.
Adam Zagoria Moffat there from St. Albans Masorti Synagogue. And I love having these chats because you find out so much about people. And we covered his journey into faith, his journey to becoming a rabbi, and also talking about the continuing work he is doing in the St. Albans community. And like I said, if you missed any of this or any of the previous Sunday strolls, you can catch up on BBC Sounds. But that is all from me today. Next week, I've got a slightly different walk for you, because I went to an exhibition. I'll tell you all about it next week, but I've just had a look at Nagat's show. She's up next, and wow, you are in for a treat this morning. I'm going to leave you with Yazoo though. See you next week.
Looking from a window above, it's like a story of love. Can you hear me? Came back only yesterday, moving far